One of the biggest signs of emotional maturity is not having fewer needs. It is learning how to express your needs without turning them into blame, pressure, or self-abandonment. Because a lot of people only know two modes. They either hide the need that they have completely, or they express it once it has already become resentment, anxiety, anger, or urgency. So the need kind of comes out sideways as criticism, as withdrawal, as over-explaining, testing, as you should have known, as never mind, it's fine. But underneath all of that is usually something much simpler. I need something and I don't know how to say it safely. Hey there, Evolver. If you have found this channel, you're probably someone who thinks deeply about life, growth, and the human mind. My name is Amelia, and this is a channel where we explore the psychology, neuroscience, and lived experience of what it actually means to evolve as a human being. In my work with individuals, couples, leaders, this is one of the most important relational skills I see people struggling with. Emotional maturity. Not because they're immature, not because they are bad communicators, not because they are themselves too much, but because many people were never taught how to have needs cleanly. They were taught to suppress them, apologize for them, perform around them, and again around them, make them smaller, or my personal favorite, wait until someone else notices. So by the time the need actually finally gets expressed out of the nervous system that has the need, it often comes out with all of the pain of every time it was ignored before. And this, my friends, this is where relationships get super confusing because the need itself may in fact be valid. And I'm here to tell you as someone with experience, it often is. But the way it comes out often creates pressure, defensiveness, and or disconnection. So in our last video, we talked about the need beneath the behavioral pattern, that underneath all that behavior that we see on the surface, there's something a little bit deeper. The idea that many of our strongest reactions are literally pointing directly towards unmet needs. A need for reassurance, for example, respect, clarity, space, rest, consideration, consistency, connection, autonomy, and in fact, care. But once you identify the need, the next layer underneath that is learning how to relate to that need with leadership. Because having a need does not mean someone else has to meet it exactly in the way in which you want it, exactly when you want, in order for you to be okay. And it also does not mean that you should pretend the need does not exist. Both extremes create problems. And this is where I like to separate three things. A need is the underlying human requirement. A request is a clear invitation to others for support. A demand is when the other person's response becomes the only way your system feels allowed to feel safe. So, for example, let's break this down. A need might be, I need reassurance. The request itself might be, could you let me know when you get home safe? The demand might sound like, if you cared about me, you would always text me immediately, especially when you get home safe. Same root need, yet very different relational impact. Ever been there? Let's say you're dating someone, and right here I have a person that's coming to mind that's a client. And her story, her nuances really echo the sentiments of so many people that I see. But let's say you, dear listener, you're joining me here today, and let's say you're dating someone. Maybe it's serious. Maybe you're in a relationship and they seem, your partner they seem a little distant. So with that distance, what happens? Your nervous system, it starts to kind of get activated. You start wondering, are they pulling away? Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? Am I about to be abandoned? The need underneath that, let's just be real, might be reassurance. That need is not wrong. That makes total sense. Whenever you feel disconnection, your nervous system is going to need reassurance. Connection is our life force as human beings. But there are different ways that need can come out. It can come out as protest. I've heard this. You clearly don't care about me. It could come out as testing, which I find a lot of people end up kind of in this bucket. I guess you're too busy for me now. Insert guilt trip. It could come out as total suppression. Never mind, I'm fine. This is what my client I have written down has very much struggled with. Or it could come out as a clean request. For example, hey, I noticed I'm feeling a little disconnected from you lately. Would you be open to checking in later tonight when you get home? Maybe send a text. That would really help me in my nervous system. That's a very different nervous system signal. Am I right? See, the thing is, in self-leadership, when we actually speak cleanly to our needs, our relationships also don't end up getting super muddled. There's not a lot of in-between. That's gray area. And the more cleanly you can name the need, the less likely it is to leak out as pressure. Or, in other words, like I say to my clients, for that gunk to get around. A clear request gives the other person a choice. And as someone who's really big in choice, I think that consent and choice is at the heart of self-leadership when navigating life with others, be it an intimate partner, family, friends, colleagues, etc. On the flip side, a demand makes their response responsible for your nervous system regulation. Now, I have another person coming to mind, another client who I think his experience represents a lot of the patterning that I see. Another example of this is needing space during conflict. Raise your right hand if you struggle with that, or if you notice that your system needs that when it perceives or has in interpersonal conflicts. I raise my hand because yes, I struggle with that too. And as someone who has been navigating this for years, it's really fascinating how when you struggle through it while applying some of the skills that we'll talk about here, my goodness, how different your relationships can really feel as you lead from self and you don't make your needs someone else's responsibility. So let's talk about this need for space during a conflict. It's super common. So one person gets overwhelmed, and what happens in that overwhelm? Their nervous system says, hey, let's shut down. That's easier. That helps us protect ourselves. Well, the other person experiences that as rejection. This is a classic anxious avoidant attachment trap that we find so many people struggling with. Now, in that situation, both nervous systems now are activated. So hence why it makes it even more important for us to navigate this from a standpoint of self-leadership. The one who needs space might say, absolutely nothing and totally disappear emotionally. On that other person's end, it's like talking to a wall. They're just not there. Or they might totally snap. I can't deal with this right now. And they walk away. But the cleaner version of that just might be as simple as this. Learning how to say, I'm getting overwhelmed and I don't want to keep talking from this state. I need 20 minutes, just 20 minutes. And I do want to come back to this. This is really important to us. That one sentence, what does it do? It protects the need for space. Let's say, for example, that space helps us to regulate our nervous system or really gather our thoughts. But it also protects the need for connection, because if you've ever been on the other side of someone shutting down or blowing up like that, it's really scary when they walk out of the room. Our abandonment wounds, they get triggered. And doing that one sentence, protecting both needs, what it says is, I'm not abandoning you. I care about you. And I'm not abandoning myself. And that is emotional maturity. Not staying in a conversation when your body cannot handle, and not leaving someone in total uncertainty because you need relief. It is learning how to take space with responsibility. And that's the thing that I found extremely challenging in my nervous system. When I started to apply what we are talking about today, taking space while also giving the other person reassurance and doing so from a standpoint of responsibility, it wasn't easy at first. And I learned how to do that with the love of my life. And I'm really grateful that these skills, they go a long way, because as someone who cares deeply about him, I don't want to leave him in the dark. I don't want that to happen to the people that I love and care about, because my nervous system, I have a need, and I either have to choose honoring my need or theirs. That's self-abandonment. We don't have to operate that way. So if this is resonating with you, trust me, we got a few more. But the last example that I want to share where this comes up often is in leadership, of course. A leader, they feel totally overwhelmed because their team keeps bringing them half-baked, half-finished problems. They feel incredibly frustrated because what's being sent to them is only half done. And so what do they feel? A client of mine I have written down, his name pops up. He has a team of over 20 people, and he feels like everything depends on him. He's extremely frustrated in those moments, and that frustration dysregulates him. And he might think, no one here takes ownership. And maybe that is partially true. But underneath the frustration for him, just like with many of you who are watching, may just simply be a need for ownership, a need for clarity, clear standards, and shared responsibility. That need very well could come out as criticism if it's expressed in something along the lines of this: I need everyone to stop being so dependent. Send me your problems with them not half-baked. Imagine hearing that from your boss. Imagine saying that as someone's leader. You're not going to feel great afterwards. So what's the alternative? It could also, on the flip side, come out like what we've been talking about as a clean leadership request. Something along the lines of this: team, before bringing me a problem, I want each person to come with 2 possible solutions and the decision point they specifically need support with. That's a boundary and a request. It names the need, if you peel back the layers, without turning it into blame. And as a leader, people are looking up to you, not just for those pivot points on how to navigate the future ahead that's usually uncertain for them, but also how to demonstrate how to lead effectively while honoring both a need and a boundary, and doing so with a clean request. This is why emotional maturity matters in leadership, in conflict, in relationships, because if you cannot translate your need into a clear request, people often experience your unmet need as pressure, your unmet need as passive aggressiveness, your unmet need as anything that their nervous system interprets, not what the need is and your request. From a nervous system's perspective, asking for what you need, trust me, can feel vulnerable. Why? Well, let's just be real. A request, it often creates exposure to what you really deep down need. And that letting someone else see that something to you matters when you've grown up and been conditioned in this world that should just roll right off your shoulder. Something matters to you. You want something. You are affected. You are not entirely self-contained. Well, if your history taught you that needs lead to rejection, punishment, dismissal, or disappointment, then asking directly, it feels unsafe. So your system may be simply trying to protect you, and it may, in that pursuit, minimize your own needs. It may make that need sound like an accusation. It may even try to get the need met indirectly. If I had a nickel for all of the indirect needs that have come my way, indirectly express, right, the beating around the bush, for lack of better words, I would be a wealthy woman in that simple one arena. Because it may be avoid asking altogether. And that avoidance, that stacks up. And that is the compound effect of poor relationships right there. That is why what we're talking about, is not just a communication skill. It's a regulation skill. And this is where a lot of communication advice becomes so shallow and so nondescript in a way that doesn't even meet the deeper need that we're talking about, because it tells people to just express your needs. But for many people, expressing need, it's not simple. It activates old learning. It brings up shame. It brings up that fear of rejection. It brings up that fear of being too much. It brings up a fear of needing more than someone might be able to give, even though they say that they love you. And in your world, loving you, we have to talk about capacity. So the real work is not just learning better words. I wish it were that simple, but I'm also grateful that it's not. Because the skills that we build, and not just learning better words, we have the skills that start to understand ourselves at a deeper level. And by doing so, it is building the internal safety to tell the truth, our truth, without totally collapsing, attacking, or disappearing. And this is where, as someone who has gone through the layer of all of this and identifying as someone who wasn't great at meeting the need, not great at really understanding how powerful our expression to needs were, and who has gone quite long and far traveling to understand how this connects to a deeper identity of self-leadership. I'm here to tell you, this specifically connects to your identity too, as a leader, as someone who feels like they are capable of meeting one's own needs. Because if you learned that being loved meant also being low maintenance, easy, agreeable, independent, or endlessly understanding everyone around you and, oh, don't worry about that, then having needs actually can feel like an identity threat on many different levels. So you might think, well, if I need something, I'm just needy. If I ask, I'm inherently a burden. If I'm disappointed, then I'm dramatic. If I have limits, then I am selfish. But those are not truths, my friend. Those are learned associations connected at the hip of what was repeated again and again. A more integrated identity. It sounds like I can have needs and still be kind. I can make requests and still respect someone's freedom. I can be disappointed and still stay grounded. I can want connection without abandoning myself. Those last three, easier said than done. Honestly, all of these are easier said than done. But I want you to really absorb what we're saying here, because likely on some level, there is an identity that is, it's like a trampoline. This is bouncing off and saying, I don't know here. So how do we make this usable? How do we make this simple in a way that you can apply it today? Let's work with what we've got so far. So let's kind of break it down. I like 3 steps, and most of these videos will kind of have 3-step practicalities because it's honestly this simple. The mastery of it, though, that takes a lot of repetitions. So let's first get clear on setting an expectation that it is going to require some messy action. And it's going to require repetitions again and again. This is not like everything that we'll talk about here in EVE. It's not a one quick fix solves all problems, because we're dealing with a nervous system that has accumulated the amount of years that you have been on this earth. And so step 1 is actually getting yourself to name the need to yourself first. Even just that can be really hard for many people. Before you communicate this need outward, we need to get clear, crystal clear inwardly. I want you to ask yourself, what am I actually needing? Is it reassurance? Is it space? Is it support, respect, clarity, consistency, maybe rest, help, ownership? If you skip this step, the need often comes out as its bare raw form, emotion without direction. And that's that kind of sideways, pressurized expression that most people have disconnection in relationships and have relationship traumas as a result. So once you get crystal clear on that inwardly, this is where I am all for a classic pen and paper, or as an environmental friendly alternative, an iPad and whatever you have in front of me. For me, it's my Remarkable. Write that down though. Something about writing it down and getting that clarity in your own handwriting and then reading that back to yourself. That goes a long way, because step number 2, we need to turn that need into a clean request. A clean request is specific, direct, and non-punitive. Not you never support me, but instead, could you sit with me for 10 minutes before we move into problem solving? Not you do not care about me, but could you let me know when you need some space instead of maybe disappearing? Not no one helps around here. But instead, hey, can we divide the responsibilities here before Friday? I know we all want to get out and have a great weekend, but let's divide some of this stuff up. Specificity, what does it do? It lowers the threat in all nervous systems that are involved. So once you have number 1, once you have number 2, let's move to step number 3. Let the other person have a response. And I find in my experience, this is also really difficult, because more often than not, a lot of evolvers are masking up, are managing other people's responses well before we even are consciously aware of this. And this is the hard part if this is something that you struggle with. A request is not control. They may say yes, they may say no. They may negotiate. Hell, they may even need time. And your work is to stay connected to yourself throughout the process and their response. Because the goal, like I said, is not to force someone else to meet the need or regulate your response, regulate your nervous system. The goal is to bring the need into sharp focus, into reality, so that it can be worked with honestly and clearly. Bar none. That's it. So if you have spent years hiding your needs, for better or for worse, or waiting for people to guess them or express them only after they become resentment because you've pushed them down like a beach ball underwater for so long, start small. Ask yourself, what do I need? What is the cleanest way to ask? Can I make this request without making the other person responsible for my entire nervous system? That, my friends, that is where emotional maturity begins. Your needs, they're not the problem. You might have spent a whole lifetime convincing yourself of that. I'm here to undo that, because the work is learning how to regulate truly to them with enough clarity, care, and leadership that they no longer have to come out sideways. Instead, by doing so, you're actually relating to those needs themselves. Because sometimes emotional intimacy is not built by having no needs. It is built by learning how to tell the truth about them, your truth about them. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you want to actually go a little bit further in the specific practical application in your world, join me and other evolvers at EVE Reflections, where we will dig into this together as a community, where you're not alone and where you are working on this with other evolvers. Click the link in the show notes. You'll get access to that. And I'm excited to continue this work together as we evolve together. Take care, everyone. Until next time, keep evolving.